Welcome back to the leak. Well, turning 18 means a lot in Australia. You're finally old enough to get rejected from a nightclub. You can get a tattoo you'll regret. And if you're a woman, you're now old enough to become the third Mrs. Edelston. Pretty exciting. Plus, you do get to vote. But statistics released this week by the Australian Electoral Commission show that about 250,000 18 to 24-year-olds didn't enrol to vote in this election. To put that in perspective, that's about one stereosonic. In particular, about 30% of 18-year-olds didn't enrol. And why didn't they? It's a quick process that can be done in a few minutes online. Are they scared this guy's going to pop up on their screens again? Or are they just forgetful?
Claire Chandler, president of the Young Liberal movement, is also grappling with the youth engagement question.
It's tricky. I don't think that you wake up on the morning of your 18th birthday and think, right, the first thing I have to do today is enrol to vote.
That's true. I woke up on the morning I turned 18 with a kebab, a tattoo of Olivia and a $10,000 debt to the casino. But don't worry, 18-year-olds, $10,000 is nothing compared to your HEX debt, so don't worry, it's totally fine. It's hard to imagine they just forgot, though. The May 23 deadline for enrolment was all over social media. And besides sexting, social media is the primary way that young people communicate. Not even memes with cute animals were enough to get young people enrolled. I mean, if we can't get through to 18-year-olds with memes, the only other option is sexting. Do we really want that? Sure, if we... So, why did so many not enrol before the deadline? Well, probably because many young people feel disengaged from politics.
Why is it that you guys aren't enrolled to vote?
I just reckon all the governments is a bunch of liars. Like, they say they keep promising us all this stuff, but never come through with it. And I was getting told you could get jail time if you don't do it. Don't vote for like 3 years in a row.
Is that enough to make you want to vote?
No.
Imagine going to jail for not voting. Hey, what are you in for? Armed robbery? Murder? Nah. Didn't vote. Oh. Stay away from that guy.
13-year-olds in the last election, or over the last 5 years, has seen 5 prime ministers, and now they're 18 and they're going to enrol to vote. Do they think that their vote matters? Do they think that what the parties say is actually going to be what ends up for them? And are they hearing anything that says the word youth in it?
Think about how frustrated an 18-year-old boy in Australia must feel. If he was like me, over his teen years, he's seen more prime ministers than breasts. So if young people are so disengaged, why aren't politicians trying to win them over?
Tim Watts, member for Gellibrand in Victoria, is one of the Labor Party's youngest MPs.
It is always a high-risk strategy for a politician to try and appear cool.
Yeah, that's true, but Barnaby Joyce can pull it off. Pictured here channeling the coolest impression of The Undertaker right there. It's great. If Barnaby loses his seat, at least he can have a career in the WWE to fall back on there. Good work, Barnaby. It's strange that young people are disengaged when there are so many issues in this election that can affect them.
Why do you think it's important that young people do enrol to vote?
So we don't get fined.
The more people voting, the more chance of the right outcome if they do commit to voting, and yeah. A lot of people my age are lazy and don't want to do it.
If more young people enrolled, they could vote for things like penalty rates, and they wouldn't have to work for below minimum wage at that 7-Eleven. In fact, the outcomes of elections would be different if more young people enrolled.
Newspoll said the last 4 elections were won and lost by the youth vote. We have to ask a question, is why aren't politicians trying to engage this vote? Why aren't they trying to win young people's vote?
Think about that. The last election was won by the Liberals because these guys didn't enrol. We had to deal with Tony Abbott because of this guy. A little less stop the boats and a little more drop the beats, am I right? Yeah, let's go for it. Yeah, let's do it. And that's not a stretch. So many close seats at the last election would have been decided differently if more young people had enrolled.
Clive Palmer won his seat at the last election by 53 votes. Now, that shows you how close some of these contests can be. At this election, there are at least 20 seats that can be defined as marginal. So, of course, a few extra young voters could change the outcome.
Because young people didn't enrol, a guy who built his own dinosaur amusement park and called it Palmasaurus got elected to Parliament. I mean, what were all the young people doing that day? So why doesn't the Australian Electoral Commission automatically enrol 18-year-olds? I mean, that's what happens in Victoria and New South Wales state elections. Maybe because neither of the major parties actually want that.
The truth is, it suits Malcolm and Bill to keep you quiet, because if we had automatic enrolment of all eligible voters, there's some evidence it would actually benefit the Greens the most. And that's bad news for the Coalition, who are politically at odds with them, but it's terrible news for Labor, who would see their own voter base erode.
If you look back over the last 7 or 8 years, it's been a shambles, basically, politics. So I think young people would be disillusioned with the major parties if they were to vote.
If young voters were enrolled automatically, the Greens would likely get a lot more votes and have a lot more power, which means we could finally deal with climate change, stop offshore processing and have marriage equality. Of course, we have to do all of that before we legalise marijuana, because it's hard to fix the country when you've got the munchies. So how can the Greens get 18-year-olds enrolled to vote in future elections? Well, Greens leader Richard Di Natale, right now I'm speaking directly to you. If you want to be a powerhouse in Australian politics, buy a ticket to the next EDM festival, get the rig out, show off those tats and start signing up those young voters.